All right, welcome our remote learners for AP World. Doing a quick check-in here for this first week back. I looked at your discussion posts and really impressed with what I saw. Thank you for putting some thought into that. Really good responses. I'll try to hop back on there and respond to some of your posts. Remember that is open till 11:59 p.m. tonight. That's Thursday. So don't forget to get on there and respond an original post and to one of your classmates as well. That's a nice connection between you and those who are studying here on site. I wanted to take a moment to show you a couple things as I'm sharing my screen with you. If you go to the class page, we are jumping into our first mini unit, kind of a boot camp, getting us back to learning again, being students again after 5 months. Also, our unit on classical societies is going to help us get a good reference point for throughout the year, especially when we get into empires and the Silk Roads, amongst other things. So that's a lot of why we're doing this, plus just rebuilding those skills. So if you go to, again, the classical societies, here's our first page. What I really want to show you is down here below the agenda guide. And you can look through this more browsing later, but I wanted to make this available for you so that you could see on the student side what I have on the teacher side, which is basically the unit guide for each unit. So you'll have the key terms here of information, some terminology and concepts you should be familiar with by the end of the unit. And then, of course, the I can statements of things that you will know or be able to do by the end of the unit that are tied to both the College Board and the World History Standards. You notice classical societies specifically are not going to be on the exam, but items that do refer to them later on will be, so that's why we're studying this. We have our essential questions, and those are they go beyond the standards, so to some larger thinking for the whole unit. Lastly, I want to show you, this is more for on-site, in person, but for those at home who want to know, kind of keeping pace for yourself here, we just completed day 1 for this unit right here. So I'll talk about this close reading here in a little bit. But what we did is we did some source analysis that I'll provide here shortly. I'll kind of walk you through what we did so that if you're at home and learning remotely, you can still get some of the skills and activities that we're doing here in the class. So at this point, I'm going to jump over to our classical societies. I would recommend also having out the summer study or summer assignment with you. And I have it pulled up here because you're going to need that for some of the source analysis through here. Now, if you've already completed the summer assignment, that's great. That means this is going to save you some time. But for those who have not, you're going to want to get on that so that you don't fall too far behind. Plus, doing the source analysis, everything's going to make so much more sense in context. So what I'm going to do is make my screen full screen for the moment. So what we have here is day 1, classical societies. So I would kind of treat this at home as one class period. And you have our objectives here for the next couple of days of what we'll be able to do. All right, so after we get through our objectives, let's take you along to, again, we're studying ancient Greece. So this is the relative location we are covering for this specific assignment or lesson. We're going to do the source analysis practice with the poem on women. So to access that, that's why you'll need that summer assignment. Hopefully you've already read this document before, but if not, you're going to need to access it. And if you have read it already, it's still going to be great to refresh it for the purpose of this activity. So for sake of time, I won't do the entire activity with you here, but I do want to guide you for some basic things to look for. So in the summer assignment, it's at page 47 in the upper right-hand corner, poem on women. So what we're going to do with this before we go into the actual poem is go through source analysis itself. So if you're not familiar with the HAPPY acronym or also HIPPY, we are going to use that interchangeably throughout the year. So this is our tool, our acronym we will use in our source analysis, which is going to help you for document-based questions throughout the course. No matter what the document is, we always want to know the historical context. So basically, what was the environment at the time? What kind of ideas or attitudes or occasions were going on that we should be aware of to help us understand this? Here's where the A or I is interchangeable. There is a difference between audience itself and then the intended audience. So I would recommend also thinking about who is intended to see this versus outside audiences, especially from a historical perspective. The purpose of the document and the author's perspective, and then ultimately how does this document help us better understand history itself? You'll also want to look at quotes that can help support your thinking, because that'll be critical when it comes to our DBQs, the document-based questions. So I'm going to jump over to the actual poem on women. And what I would recommend is if you open this on the assignment page, I added some comments to this that anyone would be able to see for you to think about some choice things in this document. So some background on this document is the author is Simonides is a poet, and he's known basically for having what they call blame poetry at the time. And the occasion that's occurring is he's more than likely at a symposium, which is, I'll show you some images to give you an idea of what a symposium is. So I would recommend pausing this and taking a moment to look at this image and what all you see within it. So I would pay attention to who is present. Who is present at this event? Because that'll tell you a lot about between their clothing and the background and the architecture within it. What does this say about the status of these people here at the event? This helps with our intended audience as well. Items in the room that are being used. So clearly this is probably some type of occasion where there's food and festivities going on. If we look at our clothing, think about what social class of people are likely here. And then also, the attire. And to get an idea of what the symposium probably consists of and its purpose. In short, one thing I'll help you understand is that the symposium, it was a big deal to be invited to these. They were gatherings at first amongst the elite of Greek society, and they got together and basically it was a feast. It was a gathering, and people would be called upon to give some type of poem or address, and with the purpose to usually entertain. And in addition to that, this was mostly men. Women who were there were specifically a certain type of woman. This was also a time to imbibe on wine that had been diluted down, so to kind of keep a buzz going throughout the evening. This was that kind of event. Specific rooms in the home would be allocated just specifically for or designated for the purpose of hosting others. So that gives you some context of where we're at. In terms of the actual document itself, I would encourage you to look through at the author's choice of words and metaphors. So comparing women to animals and which particular animals he chooses and why that is. How does that serve the purpose of this document? What is it about a sow or a vixen and how does he draw parallels to that and a type of woman? I also want you to think about the ideal woman that he chose, the metaphor being a bee. What characteristics of bees would also go along with characteristics that are desirable in a woman? What are bees known for? Well, they're known for being diligent workers. They're known for producing male offspring, one female producing several males. And then also what that says about property, what that says about the role of a woman in terms of producing a strong, reputable family, and so on. So I would go through this document, and ultimately your goal is to be able to come out of this document with a perception on what does it say about the role of women, and how does a good woman differ from a bad woman, so to speak, and the perceptions of the author. Think about his audience again. Going back to the image, you got to think about, is this something that would be addressed in public, in a large gathering of men and women of all social classes, or is this more of a private event meant to entertain? So those are some things to consider. If you have questions, definitely email me or put something in a future discussion post for more guidance on this. So in class, we looked at these. We analyzed the documents as well as the images here. And then we did a gallery walk. So we looked through additional documents and still applied hippie/happy to them. So we looked at the women's quarters, and we looked at documents or readings about slavery. The women's quarters, I wanted to go to that here. This is all in your summer assignment. The women's quarters. So that's not a written document, that is a physical one. But when you're looking through that, some things to think about as you analyze that document is what type of woman is present or women are present. Since you don't have writing, I mean, you do have an explanation down here a little bit, but since you don't have a full writing, look at the objects, the scrolls, and with scrolls being present, what social class or status of women do we probably have? There's also a perfume. Again, what does that say about social class? And can you draw any distinction between upper class women and other women in Greek society and kind of how they're treated and their roles? We also get into, and again, if you already did the summer assignment, this should already be done. But if not, it's a great refresher. There is also a secondary source about the Greeks and slavery to read through. Because then ultimately, at the end of the summer assignment, we needed to be able to discuss if the Greeks have been overly romanticized. So think about everything you've heard about the Greeks, whether in terms of a democracy or in terms of kind of the Hellenistic era. And if you think that's been overly played up or appropriately admired. So are there things within that society that you didn't know about prior to reading these documents? And did that change your perception of classical Greece? Lastly, on Friday, I'm going to assign a close reading. And so if you want a physical hard copy of that, we can make that available. But otherwise, there are some considerations to be made. I've got a copy of this PowerPoint on the course page. I want you to look at class tensions in Roman society and how those tensions were addressed. How did they try to prevent basically class conflict? What kind of system of government did they put in to try to make peace and lead to 200 years plus of prosperity in the Pax Romana? So with that, how to access these, again, back to the class page. We're in the classical societies, and you will find, again, back to, you have access to the PowerPoint I just shared with you. And then you have a downloaded version of the close reading as well as one inserted in here where I would recommend taking written notes in a notebook answering these questions. So you should come out of that reading. It's about 9 pages. You should come out of that with some awareness and the ability to answer these questions. A reminder on office hours, and I'll have a consistent recurring Zoom office hours here. You can access those. There's a tab here for recurring office hours. And so you can just attend or open that link to Zoom, enter in the code, and if I'm available, I'll invite you right into the room and we can go over questions that you might have. Again, email, always feel welcome. I plan on reaching out early next week, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Let me know what questions you have, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.